Well, good afternoon. How you guys doing? It's the last session of the day, right? This is it? I think. Is there something after me? Go Giants, that's right. Giants in 6. I'm going to say 5-2. All right, so my name's Thorp. I'm the systems engineer for Aruba Networks, and what I'm going to talk to you about is this, GenMobile and the personal network. It's really about how we approach and enable a mobile workforce. How do we do that? I think it's a problem that the state's struggling with. I think some organizations are approaching it, there's not a lot of crosstalk amongst organizations, so everybody's trying to solve this problem in different ways. So I think there's ways that we can make this work, and before we do that though, I think we have to understand the problem, understand what it is we're trying to solve, and really understand what it is to be mobile. And we're going to talk about that and about what the future of mobility is and a mobile workforce looks like. But before we get there, I kind of wanted to spend some time in the past. In the past, we had this model where there's this imagine there's a hard line here in between these two spaces, where you had a workspace, you go to work, you had a cubicle or an office, and in that office you had a computer sitting there. You maybe had a network printer off to the side, right, that you shared with other people in your general area. But typically you spent just about all day sitting in front of that computer. Take a lunch break, maybe take another break, go off, come back, but most of the time is sitting in that one space in front of that one resource. And then when you got up and left work, none of those resources went with you, right? They stayed there. You went home, right, and you go home and it's a completely different equipment set, right? We're talking Gen X, so this is, early 90s, where if you had internet connectivity, it was dial-up, right? So which means you're competing with your home phone for that access. So when you were on the internet, you were also not able to receive calls. So you had this completely different equipment set. So since you were there, if you had to take work home, if you took work home, that meant you were printing a bunch of stuff out in hard copy and carrying that home in a briefcase or a bag or something like that, right? Shake your head this way. Yep, that's how it worked. Okay? So some of us like to go back to those good old days, but those days are gone. So the next generation came along, and again, this is still in the past, right? Where this line that I talked about in the middle is starting to get a little blurry. It's still pretty hard though, because we still had the same issue where it's a different equipment set, but we had the ability to perform work using our home computers. Internet delivery to homes got a little faster than dial-up. We could also get dedicated circuits so we weren't consuming our phone line while we were online, right? So then we would use programs like VPN or maybe go to my PC to access work resources and perform work while at home. So we had this kind of a hybrid. But at work, we still had that defined space, right? Where we sat, where our computer was, where all of our resources was at work, right? Shake your head this way. It's true, okay? So that was the pattern, okay? Well, while this was happening in our workspace, our kids that were going to college was different. So while we're working this way, what was happening is that line was getting blurred, and there was this third place that was developing. And this third place, especially in a college campus, was largely a dorm room. So they had the same type of access in their dorm facility that they had in their classroom. They got more work done at quote unquote home than they ever did at their work or during their school time, right? Far more work done in a more comfortable environment for them. And their expectation was that it worked. So we built this expectation into that generation that came up. We call them millennials now, right? So we built this expectation that you have access anywhere. So what happens is we've blurred that line, and it's getting blurrier. That third place is changing now. Our third place is different, right? We have work and we have home, but it could be a coffee shop down the street. You know, you could be going to Temple around the corner or something like that. It could be your third place. And your expectation is, in that third place, you're going to have access, right? That's your expectation. Also, our expectation is that we'll be able to be productive and accomplish work regardless of what place we're in. Whether it's in our workplace, our home place, or our third place. We'll be able to be productive and accomplish work. That's really what mobile means, okay? So it's not the fact that I can use a device without wires. It's the fact that I can be productive regardless of my location. So that enables some pretty cool things, okay? We can, the idea of being tied to a physical space in an office building, that idea is kind of going away. So when you look at more modern office structures, walls are coming down, right? You don't see even cube walls anymore. You'll see collaborative spaces where you'll have large flat areas of desk space, but you won't see a lot of cables. The only thing that'll be provided there is power so that people can plug in, right? The new wire is not the Ethernet, it's the power cord, okay? We're not addicted to Ethernet, we're addicted to 110 volts AC, right? I know I am, right? I check my battery life on my phone all the time, and I'm sure you do too. So our addiction is to 110 volts AC. And as soon as we can come up with a way to do Wi-Fi, do power over the air efficiently, you know, without frying your brain, then that'll come too, okay? So that's the idea. It's about productivity regardless of location. And the thing is, because this place line has blurred, also the generation line has blurred. It doesn't matter, we call it, at Aruba we call it GenMobile. This is not an age-defined barrier anymore, okay? There are people in this room in their 20s and there are people in this room in their 50s and we're all in the same boat, okay? Workplace has never been like that before, right? You know, you look at the workplace even just 15 years ago, there was a clear line of demarcation based on generation, right? Between the baby boomers and the Gen Xers and the Gen Yers, there was a clear line of demarcation as to work styles and what positions they filled and so on and so forth. That line has gone away, okay? We're all in the same boat. We all want the same thing. So it's regardless, right? We've got a 27-year-old over here on the left, and this guy in the middle, you know, he's more my bracket in his mid-40s, right? And then we have Sue over here on the right, and they're all in the same boat. I think this is kind of fascinating and unique because it's not just an age thing, it's regardless of cultural and social and racial relevance, okay? We all want the same thing from work. So we come from different cultural backgrounds, different social backgrounds. And when we come into this place, when we're working and we want to be a productive member of this society, right? We have the same needs and the same desires and the same wants, and I think that's really cool. So let's look at Joe. We're going to follow Joe on a typical work day. Joe's a record executive for, let's just pick one, Sony, okay? So he works out of one of the headquarters office in Nashville. So Joe's in Nashville, he's at HQ, right? So when he's at HQ, what's his expectation? What does Joe use for work? He has basically his two main devices would be his phone and his tablet. Okay, he probably has a PC, but that's not his main device. That's a tertiary device. Okay, his main devices are his phone and his tablet, and his actual main device, the device he uses most throughout his day, is his phone, is his smartphone. So that's his productivity device. Okay. Think about that in regards to your workplace. That's your productivity device too. Because, you know, I'm an amateur, and I stress the word amateur photographer. And they say that the best camera that you can own is the one that you have with you when you're taking pictures, right? It's the one you have. That's your best camera, is the one you have, because it's the one that you're going to use to take pictures. So the device that you're using, your primary device when you're working, or anything that feeds into your productivity, is most likely your smartphone. It is not your laptop. It's not your desktop. It's certainly not your desktop PC. Okay? And it's not your phone sitting next to your desktop PC either, right? It's your smartphone. And that's the same with Joe. So he's at corporate HQ, and what's his expectation? Joe's not in IT. He manages accounts. He's trying to sign new acts to the label. So he's using his phone. He walks in, he sits down, he expects to have fast Wi-Fi service and to be able to access resources that he needs to get his job done. We in IT have been treating guys like Joe like they're the enemy. Like they're trying to do something that's wrong. Think about that for just a second. Is Joe doing anything wrong? Guess what he's trying to do? He's trying to work, and guess what? By work, he's trying to make money for the company, right? That's what he's trying to do. He's trying to work, and we treat him like he's the bad guy. Why are we doing that? Why are we treating Joe like that? He's not the bad guy. He's on our side. Without Joe, do we have a job? We don't have a job without Joe, do we? He's not the bad guy. He's the good guy. So let's stop treating our employees, our fellow employees at our organizations, like they're the bad guy. Okay, by and large, they're not. Do we need to monitor and know and help them to establish good work habits and good productivity habits? Absolutely, that's our job. But let's stop treating them like the bad guy, because they're our partners in this. Joe's our partner in making this business go. Okay? So let's just all agree to that right now before we keep going. He's the good guy, just like Russ. We're not the only good guys in the room. So Joe's at work. He expects fast Wi-Fi, and he expects to be able to do that without calling IT. So he comes in with a new device, right? He stood in line at the Apple store a couple weeks ago, got the iPhone 6, and he walks in with this new device. He expects to be able to get that on the network without calling you. And to be frank, you don't want to take that phone call anyway, right? If you're in IT, raise your hand if you're in IT, right? Your number one job is what? To make my phone not ring, right? That's your goal. The less my phone rings, the happier I am. Because every time my phone rings, it equals what? A problem I have to solve. It's not just work. Work is work, right? But it's a problem I have to solve if my phone rings. It's an interruption, right? So we want to be less interrupt driven. So our goal is to not have that phone ring. So Joe doesn't want to call us either. He wants to be able to self-service, get that device on the network. So we need to have infrastructure that enables that. He leaves corporate HQ. He goes to a branch office. Walks into a conference room. He's going to present, right? So there's an Apple TV that's stuck on the wall. Okay? So he connects to that Apple TV over Wi-Fi to show his presentation. He's meeting with the ACT, right? So they show up, and they've got some videos they want to show. Because they're trying to get signed, right? They want to make money too, so they're trying to get signed. So they got some content they want to show. They have their iPad. They want to get it on the network too. Oh my goodness. A guest wants to access my network. What in the world should I do with that? What has been our normal stance? No. No guests, right? You can't access my resources. And if you want to get on the internet, great. We'll get you on the internet, but you get nothing else. And we're going to give you this tiny little pipe over here that's 2.5 megs or 3 megs, and that's all you get, Mr. Guest. That's what we think of you. That's pretty sad, right? Some of you agree, some of you are like, you're smoking crack, Coy, but that's okay. So, Joe has his meeting with the band. They go through the content. And he's like, okay, we're done. He's like, okay, I head to the coffee shop. When he gets to the coffee shop, he expects to be able to log on there as well. Make that easy, and that has to be an easy access. And then he needs to be able to access resources. So he's like, hey, they showed me this video. He sends a link over to, he sends an email, or maybe he does a link call, does a UCC call to someone back at the corporate HQ to talk about it. He expects to be able to do that at the coffee shop. How many of us sit in a coffee shop and do work? Right? Expects to be able to do that. Then he goes shopping. Okay? That's the thing about this generation. Our workday is not defined by a time. It doesn't necessarily start at 8 a.m. and it doesn't necessarily end at 5. And we don't necessarily take lunch from noon to 1. Okay? Generation Mobile wants to define their work hours for themselves. It's not that they don't want to work. Look, I'm GenMobile. It's not that I don't want to work. I want to work. But I want to work on my schedule, right? And my schedule might be 10 o'clock at night. If I'm doing work at 10 o'clock at night, is that still productive? Yeah, it's just more difficult to measure, isn't it? If we're measuring work productivity by time spent in office, that's productivity I'm not measuring, right? So it might be 2 o'clock or 2:30 in the afternoon, and if I stop and buy, if I'm like, you know what, I need socks, so I stop to buy socks, is that being non-productive? Is that taking away from my work schedule? No. Productivity has been redefined. It's not defined by time spent in office, so don't think of it like that. Okay, so he stops and goes shopping, and one of the things about when he engages there, he wants, a better experience in that environment is when the environment also engages with you, right? So from a technical perspective, one of the venues I like to use is the San Francisco 49ers. So you go to a 49ers game, you install their application, right? What's one of the first things you're going to look for at a ball game? You're going to look for the bathroom.
The beer first.
Beer first, okay, but so you've been tailgating, right? So bathroom first. But anyway, it's one of the two, right? So how cool would it be to sit in your seat and go, where's the nearest bathroom? And then let the application tell you where it is and give you turn-by-turn directions. Does that sound pretty cool? That's what they're doing. That's mobile engagement for your customers. And if I show up and you show up and we're friends, we both install the application and I go, hey, where's Lance? And it can give me turn-by-turn directions to Lance and vice versa. He might be he's in the bathroom. Maybe I don't want turn-by-turn directions to Lance, but maybe he's standing in line for a beer, right? So I'm like, so then Joe leaves, he goes to his hotel, right? At his hotel, he does a mobile check-in. So when he walks into the door, you walk up to the desk and you're maybe 3 deep in line to check in. Why not just check in with a mobile application as you walk in the door? And then the mobile application tell you where your room is. And then when you walk up to the room, the application pops up an alert that says, hey, swipe here to unlock your door. And you swipe here and the door unlocks and you walk in. How cool would that be?
Swipe what?
Your mobile device. You don't get a room key. You don't get anything like that. You just proximity to your mobile device. Get you access to your room. That seems pretty cool to me, doesn't it? So we can do things like that. This is the future of mobility. This enables a more productive workforce. So the reason why I'm saying this is because there's been a client revolution. If you look at, this is 1990 to 2005, pretty much the desktop dominated the market. Then laptops started to chew into that in the early 2000s. So by 2005, we had about 60% desktop, and the rest was split between laptop and phones. Right? Well, fast forward to 2015, and look at where the desktop is now. And I think most of those are in your state agencies. I've been to your offices. I've walked around. So the desktop is down here, less than 10% of the devices that are connected to the net. Even the laptop is only taking about 20%. So between the two of them, we've got 30% of the devices that internet access. Remember when I said the phone was your #1 mobility device? That's why. Look at that. 70% of the access is chewed up by by phones, specifically by smartphones, and then the rest by tablets. So what's going to happen is this is going to level out, right? Laptops and desktops are going to level out in the 10 to 12% range, and then the smartphone and tablet are going to fight over the rest. The smartphone's always going to win, but the tablet's going to take a little bit more of that market, a little bit more of that share of internet access. And then you have the other devices, the Internet of Things, right? The other devices that are out there, the smart TVs, the refrigerators, whatever else. You got a question?
It seems like there's some crossover there as well, because people have, they have a laptop at home as well, a mobile phone as well, or a smartphone as well as a tablet, right?
Right, but this is, so that's true.
So I'm saying the smartphone, you're saying they're battling for the same thing, but really they're sharing.
Not really sharing, right? Because the number, this is actual number of devices that are on the network. So as, I'll use an example. I have 2 kids in college. So I've got these 2 kids in college. They don't even want a laptop. They want a tablet and a phone. They don't need a laptop. They can compose the stuff they need to compose on their tablet with an external keyboard. Yes?
Is the total number of devices, desktops and laptops, actually decreasing, or a percentage of the total?
It's decreasing. Ask any manufacturer that makes and sells laptops and desktops, and they will tell you that their sales in those categories are way, way down. So why do you think Microsoft is making tablets? They're not making, they never made a desktop. Why would they start making hardware, right? You had a comment? Oh, there absolutely is, but this is shrinking. The actual number of desktops and laptops is shrinking. So this revolution in how the clients are on our networks, it leads to an access revolution. Okay, so if you go up to 2013, this goes up to 2013, and you start to see between 2012 and 2013, a bit was flipped. We went from more wireless to more wired connections on our networks, right? Wired was winning up to about halfway through 2012, and then suddenly wireless started winning. So as more of these devices come out, right, because you can't buy, you can, but nobody buys laptops with Ethernet ports anymore. And if they do, they don't use them. So manufacturers are starting to leave them out, right? Ethernet ports on mobile devices are going to go the way of CD-ROMs. They're not going to exist. It's going to be hard to get. And it's going to look like this. See, here we are in 2014. Look at this. This is 2014 now. 30% is wired architecture, and 70% is wireless. And same joke. This is all in state. So why are you building wired architecture still? What's the point of that? You've decided in your head that wire equals secure, and it really doesn't. We'll talk about that in a bit, but that's the decision. That's where that came from, is the idea that this physical medium that I can hold in my hands, this wire, this cable, equals a secure transaction. And that's not true. So this presents an opportunity, and it also presents a challenge, right? The opportunity is that we have a greater level of productivity in our workforce than we've ever had in the history of the United States. People work longer hours now than they ever did. And they work different hours than they ever did. I'm That may be a good thing, bad thing. I'm not here to judge. I'm just saying this is a fact. Okay, so productivity is higher in our organizations, right? If we build this mobile infrastructure, we have a higher capacity to recruit and retain talent. But these things cause problems too. They cause challenges, right? Security. You know, that wire that makes me feel really good. It's my blanket, right? I'm going to hold on to that thing because I really like it. Also, things about compliance. You know, some of you work for agencies that have to be HIPAA compliant or have to be FERC-NERC compliant. There's all sorts of compliancy efforts out there, right, that you all have to deal with. So that comes into play too. And also control. How do I control this wild, wild west of the mobile world? Those are the challenges that you face. So this GenMobile, it disrupts your old model. This is the old model, desktop computers, on-premise applications. Remember when your applications were things that you installed locally? Oh, those were the days, right? Applications are no longer things you install locally. Right? If you're going to roll to Microsoft, the next version of Microsoft Office, it's not going to be a local install. Right? The fact that you still have Office 2013 shocks me. That Microsoft still offers that even. The only reason they offer it is for people that absolutely, honestly, it's for my father-in-law. It's for my 75-year-old father-in-law. That's why they have it. It's for people like him. Because I don't want it. I don't want a giant application taking up hundreds of gigs of valuable space on my device, when I can let somebody else host that application. Because the application is irrelevant to the data that I use it for. Its only relevance is the fact that I need to use it. So give it to me in a way that I can use it. Present it to me because I'm always connected, right? I'm always connected. So are you. So present that application to me in a way that I can use it, and then let me use it to do the work and do the things I want to do with it. That's where the application is. Not local apps, those are gone, okay? And installing and maintaining massive licensed databases of local applications, those days are over. We're going to more software service, social business. Developing custom web applications for everything that you do, right? How come every state agency is developing their own custom web application? Why are you doing that? Is it because you really want my tax dollars that badly? Right? Doesn't that seem a little, if we talk about it out loud, doesn't it seem a little silly to you? Right? Managing the operating system as well. So IT is giving up, and the thing is, we've held on to these things because they're comfortable, right? And because we feel like we can control them. Well, the mobile device has gone away with that sort of control, okay? You don't control what operating system I run on this, right? It's a flavor of Android, but when I get an alert that says an update is available, guess what I do? I install it. You know, what came out a couple of weeks ago? iOS 8, right? So everybody that had an iOS device, what'd they do? It's like the first thing they did, blam, install iOS 8. You had no control over that, right? All you could do is respond to it, right? So your control is in other places now, okay? It's in how you leverage and control this, not how you control that. These controls are not relevant to the mobile future and the mobile now. It's the controls that you create that enable this. So you have to think different. You have to think mobile, right? And mobile is four things, right? When you're creating mobile infrastructure and you're creating a mobile environment, you start out with stable air. Air has to be stable. Stable is always on, always available, right? It doesn't go up and down. It's not an also ran. It's not we also provide Wi-Fi on a guest network, right? That's not stable air. You also need it to be secure. Okay, security isn't gone, it's just different. You need it to be intelligent too, smart air. And over everything, it must be simple. Okay? It can't be something that we spend a lot of time, energy, and effort ramping up and learning about and making our lives more difficult. Okay? My company's not here to make your life more difficult. I'm not here to make your life more difficult. Your users aren't here to make your life more difficult. So let's make our lives easier. So when we're creating this infrastructure, these are the hallmarks of what we're trying to create. Smart, secure, stable, simple air. So it starts with performance. That stability, that stable air, it starts with performance. It has to be fast. So we're talking gigabit Wi-Fi, right? We're talking about dense environments because how many people are in here? About 35 or so? So you take an average room, about 35 people, that's 70 plus devices in this space. Now think about the same square footage in your office space. Do you have 70 plus devices in the same square footage? Probably not. So we're talking about a more dense environment now, a more device dense environment. So Wi-Fi, the air that you build has to support that device density at this kind of level. And it's a system level approach. So you have to think differently about security, okay? Security means it's a software defined flow based architecture, not a network defined VLAN based architecture, okay? You're not creating VLANs to support mobile networks. VLANs aren't mobile. Okay, VLANs weren't designed for mobility. The only reason a VLAN exists is to provide network segmentation so that broadcast traffic wouldn't overwhelm old switches. Okay, that's it. It's not security. Okay, it's not to define a layer between someone in accounting versus someone in HR versus someone in IT. That's not why VLANs exist. That's what we've made them into, but that's not why they exist. They don't provide any of that natively. We have to provide that through whatever architecture we're building. And it's software-defined, flow-based. So it's about, when I say flow-based, it's about the user, the device that they're using, and the data that they're accessing. That's the flow that we're talking about. And it's independent of VLAN. It has to be high performance and highly personal security. Okay, when we say highly personal, that means it's defined based on what the user is using that device for. So let's take CHP as an example. I'm going to use them as an example here really quick. You have staff that live in CHP headquarters in downtown Sacramento, and you have staff that live in district offices spread across the state. But then you have officers that drive around in cars all day and on motorcycles, right? It's two wildly different users that have wildly different expectations. So we have to have security that's personal for both of them, right? It's different for the person who works in the office over on 7th Street versus the CHP officer hanging out halfway down I-5 in the middle of nowhere, right? It's different. It's personal. Personal security based on your user community. The vendors that you choose to provide this architecture must act in concert, not in combat. It can't be a combative experience. It can't be one vendor that rules your entire architecture. If your vendor rules your entire architecture, who's in charge? It's not you, right? It's the vendor. And I'm a vendor. I'm saying that, okay? So it's about the technologies, the things that you're choosing to provide the services for this mobile architecture has to act in concert. They can't be fighting each other. You have to say yes to GenMobile. You don't get a choice. Your choice left 15 years ago, okay? So if you're in here and you're thinking, I don't have to listen to this, you're not right in regards to my organization, you're wrong, okay? I'm sorry. It's not that I don't like you as a person. Okay, but that idea is wrong. You don't get to choose now. This is the generation that we're in. This is how work is going to happen, how it's going, and this is your constituency too. Okay, because all of you in here represent state agencies that serve at the pleasure of the populace, right? So it's your constituency too, and that's their expectation. So there's this, kind of the old paradigm here was to draw this line. I'm going to draw a line. Partners are over here. So these are partners that come into my network. They're over here, and guests are over here in this bucket. And I'm going to put anybody that brings their own device, they're going to be over here in this bucket. And then right here, these are people that I trust, just in this one square. Because it's a device that I own, and it's people that work for us. So that means it's not people that I trust. It's people that I can fire if they do something wrong. Okay? See what I did there? That's our attitude. We don't trust these people. We just know that we can take action if they screw up. Oh, please change. So what we've done is we defined this is your level of access. So you over here, you're going to get this bronze level of access. And you get closer to the middle, you get like a silver and a gold and a platinum level access based on where you are in regards to an enterprise-owned device versus what type of user you are. So that's where smart air enters into the equation. It has to be intelligent. It has to be able to define what those things are. So smart air, right, gets rid of things like a desk phone. If you have a desk phone, go back to your office tomorrow or later today and wave goodbye to it. It won't be replaced with a new phone. Okay? If it's ever replaced, it won't be replaced with another desk phone. Because we all have these. Who wants a desk phone anyway? I don't want a desk phone. Why would I want a desk phone? Why would I want more than one phone number? GenMobile doesn't want more than one phone number. They want one phone number. See, that line that we used to define between work and personal life is blurred. I don't want more than one phone number. You don't want more than one phone number because it's another thing to manage. That's dumb. So your desk phone's going to go away. We're going to use unified communication applications for work things. Things like Microsoft Link that run on all of these different platforms, Android, Windows, Apple, whatever. We're going to use applications that cross platforms, right? Because then we can control the application, right? Suddenly we're controlling access again. Shocking, isn't it? Now we have visibility and control into this access. We have a tool that our users like to use because they can collaborate and it makes sense and it deploys locally on the device they already have and they use it to get work done. And it's pretty cool. So say goodbye to the desk phone. And by the way, we at Aruba, we already did. And what that looked like for us, so we're an organization of 2,000 employees, okay? So we were looking at $900 savings per employee per year. $900. Now I'm sitting here as one of your constituents and I look at that $900 and I'm like, ooh, that's significant. If I scale that across the entire state, that's a significant amount of savings. Just getting rid of desk phones. And it's $1 million in infrastructure savings. Because when I go to an all wireless workspace, I don't have to pull Ethernet cable to every place that a person lands, right? That's what we've been doing. We've been pulling this Ethernet cable to every place a person lands. And that's expensive. Because copper is not cheap, right? So how about I take that expensive copper and I pull it to where it makes the most sense from an access standpoint. I pull it to where I drop a wireless AP. And that's where my copper lives. And the only thing I pull to the desk is power, because we're all addicted to 110 volts. And we're not the only ones, right? So yeah, we might be doing it because I'm a Wi-Fi company, but we have real organizations that are doing this. I can't think of anything, you know, if I go most conservative organizations, I start at government, federal and state. And then I go to insurance. It's an incredibly conservative business. And this is an insurance company that went all wireless. They got rid of the desk phone. They went full Microsoft Link across their entire infrastructure, including people that you would think needed, you know, I need a desk phone. You don't need a desk phone, right? So all wireless, millions of dollars of savings. So what happens is that now since our infrastructure is changing and how we are addressing the mobile market is changing and how we're addressing mobility is changing, our people need to change too. Okay? So typically we've had, you know, desktop support, you know, we kind of a help desk / operations model, right? Where you had help desk on one side, operations on the other, and in the operations you had network guys and server guys. And on the help desk side you had software, you had OS guys, so storage over here, OS guy over here, that kind of thing, right? We had these lines. Those lines are going to get kind of fuzzy, okay? So what we're seeing is the idea of a chief digital officer, someone who sits on top of a mobility organization. And you're not going to have really network engineers. You're going to have mobility engineers or mobile engineers, right? And we focused on mobility. That's your next, if you're a network engineer in this room, that's your career path, is mobility, okay? That's where it is. So these next few slides are showing one of the things that we can do is this application-based service, right? Nobody wants to, I'm a little old school, so I like my browser, but most people now just want to, there's an app for that. You have an app for that? Do you have an app? Do you have an app? There's an app for that, right? So they want an app. So we need a platform to distribute and deploy applications easily, okay? So same thing with those web-based applications that you guys all developed independently. Why are you developing your mobile applications independently as well? Right? Why not work on concert? Because a lot of the needs are the same. Develop a platform or work on a platform that's widely accepted by the App Store and the Google Play Store, right? So you work on a platform that already exists in just deployment and writing towards it, and writing towards those SDKs gets easier. Stop making your lives harder for yourselves. Because all of these apps, these apps that you're seeing here, they're all developed, I mean, they look wildly different in the same platform. And I talked about the 49ers already and delivering that mobile fan experience. So above all, even though it needs to be smart, it needs to be secure, it needs to be stable, but above all, it has to be simple. It has to be. So that means shifting to a service delivery model. I'm delivering a service. I'm like Amazon Prime, where you're going to get 2-day shipping every time. I'm delivering a service that's just going to work. You know, the only time you think about plumbing is when it breaks, right? It's a service that always works. So that's your model, is I'm delivering a service that's going to always work. It can be cloud-based, it can be on-premise. You know, it doesn't. That's not a defining mark of whether or not this service is easy to use and your employees will love it or use it, and it will get you to the next level, right? Whether or not it's cloud-based or not. It can be, but it doesn't have to be. And it's about these 4 things, and I've only got a couple of minutes, so I'm going to kind of stop here and talk about these 4 things. It's about the context of the data. When I talk about context of the data, it's not just about the data itself. It's about the user that's accessing it, the device that they're using to access that data with. That's the context, okay? We've been treating data like it's independent of how it's used, and it's not. It's absolutely tied at the hip as to how it's used. The data is not independent. I can take the same data, the information on my driver's license, for example. That's a chunk of data living in a database, right? It has all kinds of pertinent information about me, and that lives in a database somewhere. And if it's a server accessing that data, doing a backup, that's one thing. But if it's a DMV employee accessing it, it's another thing. But if it's a third party accessing that data, it becomes yet another thing. It's about context, right? Even though the data is the same. So since you have these varying layers of context, you have to write policy around that context. And that policy needs to live at the heart of your network, at the heart of your infrastructure. This policy is the one that's making those orchestrated decisions on how things are accessed and what type of access is happening. That's enabling a mobile and efficient workforce, is having that policy engine in the middle instead of different point policy engines at different places, right? Once you have that policy engine, then it pushes those policies out to enforcement points. And those enforcement points live in two places, at network edges, like at firewalls, and on the devices themselves. Those are the two places where you can enforce policy, okay? Anywhere in between is not a good way to enforce policy, okay? If I'm enforcing it at the switch level, it's too late. They've already got an IP address. I need to be enforcing policy at the device level, right? And finally, visibility. So I have this context. I need to know that Coy is using his personal device to access this data. Does Coy need to access driver's license information? Let's say I work for the DMV. Does he need to access driver's license information with his personal device? Yes or no? Doesn't matter what the answer is. It's whether or not I have visibility into it when he's doing it, right? If it's yes, then I need to have visibility. If it's no, I need to have that visibility too. Okay? So that's what we're talking about here. Enabling the next generation workforce, and this is the last slide. I'm going to fast forward here. This is it. There's one thing I want you to know, I want you to take away from here, is that your workforce is on the move. People are moving. Your infrastructure has to follow it. Thanks for your attention. Have a good rest of the afternoon. Go Giants. You have a question?
I don't think we're so much resistant as we have so many compliance issues, what we're allowed to do. And the state, it's slow. How are other agencies, federal?
So it depends. It's a good question. State is slow. How are other agencies doing this, right? Say on a federal level. So Department of Defense happens to be one of our biggest customers, not my customer specifically, but they are addressing this issue, right? So one of the way you address the compliance issue is you build a compliant infrastructure, right? So you build that compliant infrastructure based on those compliancy protocols, whether that FIPS, whatever those compliance mechanisms are, you build the infrastructure around it. Okay, that's how you address it. If you start by building your infrastructure around that compliancy effort, it's going to make your life easier on the next level of implementation because your infrastructure is already compliant. Now, some of the compliancy that the state has for itself is self-written. Okay, so you're defining compliancy for your own selves, and there's been this some internal tug of war between like security and access people, and we all have to work together. We're in the same boat. Stop standing up and trying to row in a different direction. So we all need to be in the same room talking about the same problems, because that GenMobile thing that I told you about earlier, it affects your security folks too. They're thinking about it as well. So it's not just, do I enable what? I need to enable business for my organization so that we get the most done for our constituency. Hope that answered your question.
Yes.
Okay. Any other questions? Yes. Yeah, that exists right now.
So is this somewhat like fast track when you drive across the bay where you don't have to stop?
Something like that, right? So the infrastructure has the ability to know and recognize your device. So when I come online, when I walk into my corporate office in Sunnyvale. I'm based here in Sacramento, but when I go back to corporate in Sunnyvale, I walk in the door, the network already knows about my device and can provide context around its access when I walk in. So yeah, it's about building that intelligence into the center of the network via that policy engine that I talked about just a minute ago. Yeah. I think that's all the time we have. Thanks a lot, guys.